Have you ever felt a presence, so quiet, it's almost like a whisper in your bones? Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, please like the video, subscribe for more, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're listening from. It means a lot to us. October 17th. Rain lashed against the windows of the old Victorian, like tiny fists pleading to be let in. The kind of storm that turns streets into rivers and hearts into hollowed-out caves. In the dim kitchen, Eleanor traced the chipped edge of her mother's teacup, the last one left unbroken. 3 months since the funeral. 3 months of silence so thick, it swallowed the tick of clocks. She'd moved back to her childhood home in Vermont, hoping the familiar creaks of floorboards might soothe her. Instead, the emptiness echoed louder. That's when she saw him. A shadow curled beneath the radiator in the hallway. Dusty gray fur matted at the shoulders. Eyes like tarnished pennies, watching her. Just the old house cat, the neighbors had said when she'd returned. Nobody's cat really hangs around the block. Been here years. Doesn't make a sound. Eleanor remembered him from childhood summers, a fleeting blur darting under porches. Now he was older. A jagged scar split his left ear, a map of battles she'd never know. He didn't meow when she set down a saucer of milk. Didn't flinch when the thunder cracked, shaking the bones of the house. Just stared, as if he understood the weight in her chest. She named him Silas. After the grandfather she'd never met, another ghost in this too-quiet house. He'd appear at dawn, perched on the dew-soaked garden wall, watching her dig weeds from her mother's neglected rose beds. His gaze never left her, steady as a lighthouse beam. Once, she tripped on a root, soil staining her knees. A soft sound escaped her throat, half sob, half laugh. Silas padded closer, until his fur brushed her ankle. Warmth through the denim. A tiny anchor in the storm. Nights were the hardest. Eleanor would wander the halls, trailing fingers over faded wallpaper, pausing outside her mother's sealed bedroom door. Grief was a physical thing here, cold and sharp as the draft under the threshold. One midnight, she found Silas sitting sentry outside that door. Eyes fixed on the handle, tail coiled tight. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered. He didn't turn, but his ear, the torn one, twitched, as if catching a frequency only he could hear. She began leaving her bedroom door open. Just a crack. And one raw, rain-slicked Tuesday, she woke to wait at the foot of her bed. Silas, curled into a comma on her mother's quilt. His ribs rose and fell in a rhythm that matched her own shaky breaths. Eleanor didn't move, didn't dare. But tears, hot and sudden, blurred the dark. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel empty. It was the silence that shifted first. Eleanor started talking aloud. To Silas, as she scrubbed pans or sorted through boxes of her mother's things. She hated tulips, thought they were tacky, burned every pot roast. God, I miss them. Silas would watch from his radiator throne, blinking slowly. Golden eyes, holding space for her words. Once, she swore, he sighed. A sound like dry leaves skittering on pavement. Then came the morning she found him, in the parlor. Nose pressed to the glass of her mother's portrait. A black and white photo, hair swept into victory rolls. Eleanor knelt beside him, the hardwood biting her knees. "That's her," she murmured. Silas tilted his head, scarred ear flattening. His paw lifted, touched the glass, right over her mother's smile. Lightly, like a blessing. Eleanor's breath caught. Something unclenched deep behind her ribs. She reached out, hand trembling. Not to touch the photo, but to rest her fingers between Silas's ragged shoulder blades. His fur was softer than she expected, warm and alive. Under her palm, a purr rumbled. Faint, gravelly, like an old engine waking. It vibrated up her arm, into the hollow places. That night, she didn't close her bedroom door at all. Silas slept on the quilt again, a warm curve against her chilled feet. Outside, the rain gentled to a whisper. Eleanor stared at the ceiling, heart beating a strange, hopeful rhythm. Something's happening, she thought. Something. She didn't know what. Didn't need to. For now, it was enough. That the silence had finally breathed. The silence in the old house didn't vanish. It simply changed shape. Like fog thinning to reveal contours you'd forgotten were there. Eleanor noticed it first, in the kitchen. The scrape of a ceramic bowl on linoleum as she set down Silas's breakfast. His bowl now. She'd bought it at the thrift store, chipped cobalt blue. He'd appeared like smoke as she placed it near the radiator. Not rushing, just materializing. He ate with a slow, deliberate dignity, pausing sometimes to look up at her. Those tarnished penny eyes, holding hers for a beat longer than felt accidental. Then, the soft crunch of kibble resumed. The sound that somehow made the empty chair at the table less like a wound. Mornings became rituals. Eleanor would wake to the weight still pressed against her feet, a solid warmth under the quilt. She'd move carefully, sliding out without disturbing him. But by the time the kettle whistled, he'd be there, sitting on the worn braided rug by the sink, watching the steam curl towards the ceiling. She started talking properly, not just scattered comments, but whole sentences, stories. She used to sing while she washed dishes. Eleanor murmured one gray Tuesday, suds clinging to her wrists. Often, terribly. Blue moon. Sentimental journey. She glanced down. Silas was washing a paw, methodically dragging his rough tongue between spread toes. But his ears, those ragged satellites, were tilted towards her voice. I'd pretend to cringe, cover my ears. A brittle laugh escaped her. God, I'd give anything to hear it now. The toothful noise. Her voice cracked. She gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white. A small sound, not a meow, more like a soft, interrogative chirp. Harpy? She looked down. Silas had stopped washing. He was gazing up at her, head slightly cocked, the scar on his ear stark in the morning light. Just looking. Not demanding, not pitying. Just present. Eleanor took a shaky breath. The tightness in her throat was just a fraction. She dripped soapy water onto his head. He blinked, slowly, deliberately, but didn't flinch. A silent thing. I see you. He began to follow her. Not like a dog, eager and trotting, but like a small, dusty shadow with agency. If she went to the overgrown garden, he'd appear on the sun-warmed stone of the patio, a compact loaf of watchfulness. If she sorted through boxes in the chilly attic, thick with the smell of old paper and cedar, she'd turn and he'd be there. Perched on a trunk, tail curled neatly around his paws, observing her wrestle with ghosts. One afternoon, she pulled out her mother's wedding dress. Tissue paper whispered like ghosts as she lifted the lid. The satin, once ivory, had yellowed at the folds. The scent of lavender sachets, faint but persistent, rose like a sigh. Eleanor traced a bead on the bodice, her vision blurring. A soft thump. Silas had jumped down from the trunk. He padded silently across the dusty floorboards, stopping beside the open box. He didn't sniff the dress. didn't paw at it. He simply sat, very close to her knee, his shoulder just brushing her leg. His warmth, a small point of contact, in the attic's chill. He stared, not at the dress, but at the open box, at the layers of tissue, as if contemplating the weight of memory itself. Eleanor rested a trembling hand, lightly, on the bony ridge between his shoulders. His purse started, low and resonant, vibrating up her arm, the counterpoint to the silence of the dress. She looked like starlight, Eleanor whispered. Silas leaned, almost imperceptibly, into her touch. He had preferences. Subtle, but unmistakable. He disliked the canned tuna patty, turning his nose up with aristocratic disdain. But flaked mackerel in spring water? He'd devour it, then meticulously clean every speck from his whiskers. He claimed a particular sunbeam that fell across the faded Persian rug in the parlor precisely at 2:17 p.m. He'd arrive, settle, and become a puddle of molten fur, soaking in the light. Eleanor started timing her tea breaks to coincide. She'd sit on the floor nearby, back against the worn velvet sofa, sipping Earl Grey. Sometimes she'd read aloud snippets of articles or letters she found. Sometimes she'd just sit, watching the dust motes dance in the golden beam, listening to the deep, rhythmic rumble of his contentment. Peace, thick and warm as honey, seeped into those afternoons. He was fascinated by her mother's things. Not destructively, but with a quiet, intense curiosity. When Eleanor sorted through a box of costume jewelry, he'd watch, head tracking her movements as she held up glittering brooches and tangled strands of pearls. Once, she pulled out a small, tarnished locket. It sprang open in her palm. Inside, a tiny, faded photo of Eleanor as a gap-toothed 5-year-old, and her mother, young, vibrant, smiling. A choked sound escaped Eleanor. Silas, who had been observing from atop a stack of books, stood. He stretched, long and deliberate, then jumped down. He walked to her, not stopping until his face was inches from her trembling hand holding the locket. He didn't try to sniff it. He just looked at the tiny faces, then up at Eleanor's tear-streaked one. He made that sound again. Barbie? Gentle, questioning. Then, slowly, deliberately, he pushed the top of his head against her wrist. The spot just above the locket. The warm pressure. A cat's version of holding your hand. Eleanor closed her fingers around the cool metal and let her tears fall onto the dusty rug, onto the soft gray fur pressed against her skin. He stayed there, his head a grounding weight, until her breathing evened out. He began sleeping closer, not just at her feet, but curled against her side or nestled in the hollow behind her bent knees. His body, a compact furnace, radiating heat through the sheets. Eleanor found herself falling asleep faster, lulled by the soft rhythm of his breathing, the faint vibration of his purr thrumming through the mattress. The nightmares, the ones where she was running through endless gray corridors, searching for her mother's voice, became less frequent, less suffocating. Waking to the soft weight of him, the reality of his warm fur under her fingertips became an anchor. The proof of life. One rainy Thursday, Eleanor decided to bake. Her mother's infamous rock-hard oatmeal cookies. The recipe card, stained with vanilla and butter, was tucked in an old cookbook. As flour dusted the counter, as the smell of cinnamon and brown sugar began to warm the kitchen, Silas appeared. He didn't beg. He sat near the oven, observing the process with grave interest. When Eleanor accidentally dropped a wooden spoon, it clattered loudly on the tile. She jumped, hand flying to her chest. Silas, didn't startle. He blinked, slowly, then stood. He walked to where the spoon lay, nudged it with his nose, then looked back at her. "Barbie?" "It's okay, buddy," she breathed, heart still thudding. He patted back, but instead of returning to his spot, he walked right up to her legs, where she stood frozen by the counter. He rubbed the entire length of his body along her shin. A deliberate, grounding, tactile reassurance. "You are here. I'm here. It's just a spoon." The scent of warm cookies, the rhythmic pressure against her leg, the quiet rumble starting in his chest, it washed over her. The sudden spike of panic dissolved. She reached down, scratched behind his good ear. He leaned into it, purr deepening. For the first time, she realized she was smiling. A real one, not a ghost of one. He started showing her things. Little discoveries, like a cat leaving gifts. A dusty marble rolled from under a bookshelf. A forgotten hairpin, gleaming silver, caught in a shaft of sunlight. One afternoon, while she was clearing ivy from the back porch, he sat very still, staring intently at a loose floorboard near the steps. His tail tip twitched, the only sign of his focus. Eleanor, the board was warped, slightly raised at one end. She wiggled it, and it came loose. Beneath, nestled in the damp, dark space, wasn't a mouse or a bug. It was a small, water-stained envelope, addressed in her mother's looping script to Eleanor at her old college address. Return to sender was stamped across it years ago. Eleanor's breath hitched. She pulled it out, the paper fragile. Inside, a single sheet. No long letter. Just a few lines, in that familiar hand. "My dearest Ellie, saw the brightest bluebird today. Sat right on the kitchen sill. Made me think of your eyes. Wanted you to know. Love you always." Dated 2 weeks before the first stroke hit. Before the slow fade began. Eleanor sat back on her heels, the paper trembling in her hand. Silas, having seemingly accomplished his mission, stretched languidly, then hopped off the porch, disappearing into the overgrown hydrangeas. She read the words again and again. The simplest message, brimming with a love so ordinary, so profound. "Saw a bluebird. Thought of you." The tears came, but they were softer now. Washed clean by the sheer, uncomplicated sweetness of it. She looked towards the hydrangeas, where Silas had vanished. "Thank you," she whispered into the damp afternoon air. She didn't know if he heard, but the ivy stirred just a little. That night, Eleanor didn't just leave her door open. She opened her mother's bedroom door. Just a crack. The air that sighed out was stale, heavy with the scent of lavender sachets and unused linen. She stood on the threshold, heart pounding. Silas appeared beside her, silent as ever. He didn't try to go in. He said, looking at the sliver of darkness beyond the door, then up at her face. His expression, in the dim hallway light, was unreadable, but his tail, was around her bare ankle. A fleeting, comforting pressure. Eleanor took a deep breath. She didn't step inside. Not yet. But she left the door open. They stood there together, on the border between memory and the present, the old house cat and the grieving daughter, listening to the quiet hum of a house, slowly coming back to life. And then, for the first time since he'd entered her life, Silas made a different sound. Not a chirp, not a purr, a soft, low melodic trill, like a tiny, rusty bell, ringing once, in the stillness. Eleanor looked down at him, startled. He gazed back, his golden eyes reflecting the faint light from her own room. It sounded, impossibly, like a word, like home. Or maybe it was just the sound of a door beginning to open. The crack in the door stayed open. Not an invitation Eleanor felt ready to fully accept, but a presence acknowledged, like leaving a light on for someone lost. The house seemed different afterward, as if releasing a breath held for decades. Silas, however, began to change. Slowly to first. It started with the staring, more intense, more focused. He'd sit for long stretches, facing her mother's open bedroom door, perfectly still, only the tip of his ragged ear twitching occasionally. Not guarding, not yearning, listening, as if tuning into a frequency Eleanor couldn't perceive. Call his name softly? Silas? He wouldn't turn. Not immediately. It took seconds, sometimes longer, for his awareness to shift, as if pulling himself back from somewhere. Then he'd blink, slowly, deliberately, and pad towards her, resuming his familiar role as her quiet companion. But the look in those tarnished penny eyes held a new depth, a knowing that unsettled her. Then came the scratching, not destructive, not frantic, but a persistent, rhythmic tap-tap-tap-tap scritch. Always at the same spot, the wall directly behind her mother's old dressing table. Inside the room Eleanor still couldn't bring herself to enter. She'd hear it at night, a soft, insistent percussion beneath the sighing of the old house. She'd creep to the doorway, peering into the gloom. Silas would be there, batting one paw, claws carefully sheathed, against the faded floral wallpaper, right where the headboard of her mother's bed would have touched the wall. Tap, 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 scritch. Fuzz. Tap, 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 scritch. He'd stop when he sensed her, turning his head, his eyes catching the faint light from the hall, glowing like embers in the dark. He wouldn't meow, wouldn't approach, just looked at her, before melting back into the shadows of the room, leaving Eleanor standing alone, hearing nothing but the frantic thud of her own heart, and the phantom echo of his tapping claws. Curiosity, cold and insistent, began to coil in her stomach. What was there? Why that spot? Was it mice? Termites? Some old feline obsession? But Silas wasn't a hunter. He showed zero interest in the actual mice that occasionally rustled in the pantry. This felt different, purposeful. She tried rationalizing it. Old houses settle, sounds travel strangely. She murmured to him one morning, as he sat in his 2:17 p.m. sunbeam, watching her polish her mother's silver teapot, an attempt to reclaim something normal. Silas merely blinked, his gaze drifting past her, towards the hallway, towards that room. His silence felt like a rebuttal. The conflict wasn't just external. In the scratching, it bloomed inside her, a gnawing tension between the raw need to know and the paralyzing fear of what knowing might mean, of what she might unleash, or what she might confirm about Silas, about herself. Was she projecting? Grief making her see patterns in an old cat's eccentricities? Or was there something more? The memory of his low trill, sounding so impossibly like home, or her mother's name, echoed in her mind, a ghostly refrain. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, drawn by the view, terrified of the fall. One rainy afternoon, the tension found a voice. Her cousin Lorna, practical, no-nonsense Lorna, came by with groceries. Still haven't tackled Aunt Margaret's room, Ellie? Honest. Wiping her boots briskly on the mat, her voice slicing through the quiet like a knife. It's been months. You need to clear it out. Sell the furniture. Move on. Eleanor flinched. Move on felt like a betrayal. Silas, who had been observing Lorna from his radiator perch. His tail, usually a languid metronome, puffed slightly, held low and stiff. He didn't hiss, didn't growl, but a low, almost inaudible rumble vibrated in his chest. A warning, deep and primal. Lorna didn't notice. She breezed into the kitchen, unpacking bags. Seriously, this place is a time capsule. And that cat. She glanced at Silas, who hadn't moved from his spot, his eyes fixed on Lorna with unnerving intensity. He gives me the creeps. Just sits there judging. Like he knows things. Lorna laughed, but it sounded forced. Eleanor's hand tightened on the counter. He does, she thought fiercely, surprising herself. He knows you don't understand. He's just old, Eleanor said, her voice tighter than she intended. He's helping. Helping. Lorna snorted, placing a carton of milk in the fridge. By scratching the walls? I heard him last time. Sounds like he's trying to dig to China in there. Probably just pests. You should call an exterminator. The casual dismissal, the reduction of Silas's strange ritual to vermin, stung. Silas chose that moment to leap down silently. He walked past Lorna, close enough that his tail brushed her ankle. Lorna jumped. Cold. Silas ignored her. He walked straight to Eleanor and rubbed his entire body, firmly, deliberately, against her legs. Back and forth, the same grounding gesture he'd used the day she dropped the spoon. I'm here. You are here. She doesn't understand. Eleanor felt a surge of fierce, protective warmth for this old, scarred, mysterious creature. He's not scratching at anything, Eleanor said, her voice steadier now. He's scratching on something. There's a difference. Lorna stared at her, then at the cat, who had now settled at Eleanor's feet, gazing up at her with calm, ancient eyes. Ellie, Lorna said slowly, concern replacing irritation. Maybe you need a break from this place. Come stay with me for a bit. The offer was kind, but it felt like being asked to abandon a post. To leave Silas alone, with the scratching, with the room, with whatever silent conversation was happening, that she was only just beginning to overhear. No, Eleanor said softly, reaching down to touch Silas's head. His purr rumbled, loud and resonant, filling the kitchen. I need to be here. The scratching intensified. Not louder, but more frequent. Daytime now, not just at night. Eleanor found herself drawn to the doorway, again and again, watching Silas perform his ritual. Tap 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 scritch. Tap 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 scritch. Always that same spot. The wallpaper, faded pink roses on a cream background, began to show wear. A small patch, about the size of her palm, where the surface layer was fraying, revealing glimpses of something underneath. Not plaster, but another layer of paper. One evening, the tension became too much. The scratching started earlier than usual, as dusk painted the hallway in long, melancholy shadows. Eleanor stood at the threshold, watching Silas. His movements seemed urgent. Not frantic, but determined, compelled. He stopped suddenly mid-scratch and turned his head to look at her, not with his usual slow blink, but with a direct, unwavering gaze. He held it for a long, silent moment. Then deliberately, he lifted his paw and tapped the worn spot on the wall. It seemed to say, "Look here." Her breath caught. The air in the hallway felt charged, thick. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her chest. But beneath it, a stronger current pulled her. Trust in this silent bond that had anchored her through the storm. Trust in the cat who found lost letters and understood grief, and who, impossibly, seemed to hold echoes of her mother's love. She took a step forward, crossing the threshold into her mother's room. For the first time since her death, the scent of lavender and dust enveloped her, a physical embrace. Silas didn't move from his spot by the wall. He watched her, his eyes huge in the dim light. Eleanor approached slowly, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. She knelt beside him, ignoring the dust that would stain her knees. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The worn patch on the wallpaper was right at eye level. Up close, she could see it clearly now. Beneath the peeling pink roses lay another layer, a deep forest green. And on that green, in a spot Silas had meticulously worked, a shape emerged, not random damage, but the deliberate, faded outline of a small, painted symbol. A heart, simple, rendered in a slightly brighter green. Long ago, Eleanor reached out, her fingers trembling, not to touch the wall, but to touch the space just above the revealed heart, where Silas had been tapping. Her fingertips brushed the frayed paper, and then drifted down, to rest gently on the old cat's head, between his tattered ears. He leaned into her touch, his purr erupting, a deep, rolling thunder that vibrated through the floorboards, through her bones, and seemed to shake the very foundations of the silent, waiting house. The question hung in the dusty air, thick as paint. Who put it there? And why, after all these years, had an old house cat led her to find it? The green heart pulsed in the dim light. Not literally, but in Eleanor's vision, swimming with unshed tears. It was simple, crude, painted by an untrained hand. A child's hand. Her hand. The memory slammed into her, not as a gentle wave, but as a rogue breaker, crashing over the seawall of her composure. She was 6, maybe 7. Sick with a fever, confined to her mother's big bed. The room smelled of Vicks Vapor, tea, and worry. Her mother, young then, her dark hair still untouched by silver, sat beside her, reading Charlotte's Web, her voice a soft lullaby against the drumbeat in Eleanor's ears. Bored, restless, little Eleanor had found a stub of green crayon, and on the wall, just behind the headboard, hidden from immediate view, she'd drawn her love. A heart. Her mother had discovered it later, not angry, but with eyes shining, sweeping Eleanor into a hug that smelled of flower and lavender. "My secret treasure," she'd whispered, kissing her hot forehead. "Just for us, Ellie Bell. Decades buried, unearthed by an old cat's persistent paw." Eleanor's knees buckled. She sank fully onto the dusty carpet, her back against the side of her mother's bed. Silas, instantly, was there. Not purring now, not demanding attention. He pressed his entire side against her trembling leg, a solid, warm line of silent support. His golden eyes, fixed on her face, watched the tears finally break free, tracking hot paths through the grime on her cheeks. She knew, Eleanor choked out, her voice raw, scraping against the silence. She knew it was there all along. Silas nudged her hand with his cool nose. A quiet prompt. "Look closer." Her gaze, blurred with tears, dropped from the heart to the spot Silas had been tapping. Not scratching randomly. Tapping. Tap, 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 scritch. Directly above the heart. A section of wallpaper less worn, but now, under her focused gaze, revealing a subtle irregularity. A seam, almost invisible disguised by the pattern of roses, but undeniably, a small, perfectly square outline. A hidden panel. The air left Eleanor's lungs in a rush. The fear, the tension, the grief, coalesced into a single, terrifying, exhilarating point. What was inside? Why hide it? Why had Silas? Driven by a force deeper than courage, she reached out. Her fingers, trembling violently, traced the faint seam. It felt different, slightly raised. She pressed, gently, near one corner. Nothing. She pressed another corner. A faint, almost inaudible click. The small square of wallpaper and the thin backing board beneath popped inward, just a fraction. Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She glanced at Silas. He sat perfectly still, utterly focused. His ragged ears pricked forward, his entire being radiating a silent, intense anticipation. Taking a shuddering breath, she hooked her fingernails into the tiny gap. The panel resisted, stiff with age, then yielded, swinging inward on unseen hinges, revealing a dark, shallow cavity, about the size of a small book. Dust motes danced in the weak light filtering through the doorway. Inside the cavity, no jewels, no stacks of money, no shocking secrets, just a small, battered tin box. The kind that once held mints or cough drops. Faded blue, with tiny white flowers barely visible under a patina of grime. Eleanor stared, disbelief warred with a profound sense of inevitability. Of course, her mother, practical yet sentimental, would hide treasures in plain sight, behind a child's forgotten graffiti. She reached in, her fingers brushing cool metal, pulled the box out. It was light, too light. She cradled it in her palms, feeling the slight rattle of something loose inside. The lid was rusted shut. Silas made a sound. Not a chirp, not a purr. A low, urgent, vibrating hum, deep in his chest. Open it. Eleanor's hands shook so badly she could barely grip the lid. She wedged a thumbnail under the rusted edge. Tried. It resisted, then gave with a soft metallic screech. Inside, no letter, no diary, no explanation, just objects. Small, imbued with the quiet power of memory. A smooth, gray river stone, cold to the touch. From the creek behind the house, where she and her mother used to picnic. A single, tarnished silver button, shaped like a daisy. From her mother's favorite spring cardigan, the one she wore gardening. A brittle, pressed violet, its purple hue long faded to a ghostly beige. Plucked from the wild patch by the back fence, Eleanor's first book for her. A tiny, exquisite, porcelain pocket watch. No bigger than a thumbnail. The face cracked, the hands frozen at 3:15. Eleanor recognized it instantly. Her grandfather's, the one her mother kept on her dressing table, a cherished relic. Eleanor had broken it, at age 10, during a frantic search for a missing hair ribbon. She'd hidden it, terrified of her mother's disappointment. Her mother had never mentioned it, had simply placed the empty spot where it had been. The dam broke. Not tears, but a sob, wrenched from some deep, cavernous place within her. A sound of pure, unadulterated grief, mixed with a dawning, agonizing understanding. Her mother had known about the broken watch, known about the hidden heart, known about the fear, the shame, the small childhood secrets. And she hadn't scolded, hadn't demanded. She had simply kept them, curated them, hidden them away, like sacred relics, behind a symbol of her daughter's love. "She forgave me," Eleanor gasped, the words ripped out on a wave of weeping. "She forgave me, and I never even knew. I needed forgiving." The weight of years of unspoken guilt over tiny transgressions, over not being enough, not visiting enough, over the final months of confusion and frustration, crashed down. She doubled over, the tin box clutched to her chest, sobs racking her body, alone, utterly alone, in the dusty silence of her mother's room. Except she wasn't alone. Silas moved, not to her side this time. Climbed slowly, deliberately, onto her lap, pushing past the box she held, ignoring the objects spilling onto the carpet. He placed both front paws firmly on her heaving chest, his weight, surprisingly solid, pressed against her heart. She looked up, through a blur of tears, into his ancient, tarnished penny eyes. They held her gaze, unblinking, impossibly knowing, and then he leaned forward, stretching his neck until his cool, damp nose, just for a fleeting second, the tear-stained skin below her left eye, the gesture so tender, so profoundly human, it stole her breath. He held still, nose pressed to her cheek, paws steady on her chest, his warmth, his solid presence, an anchor in the storm of her grief. Eleanor stopped breathing, stopped sobbing. The world narrowed to the pressure of his paws, the cool touch of his nose, the depth of his gaze. In that suspended moment, in the silent room filled with dust and ghosts and love, she heard it, not with her ears, deep inside, in the place where memories lived and mothers never truly left. A whisper, fragile, like the chime of the broken porcelain watch, yet utterly clear. "Ellie," her mother's voice, not as it was at the end, frail and confused, but as it lived in Eleanor's deepest memory, warm, strong, infused with boundless love. "My Ellie Bell." It wasn't Silas's mouth that moved. His gaze remained locked on hers, intense, unwavering, but the voice, the feeling, poured through the contact point, where his paws pressed her chest, where his nose touched her tear. A conduit, a bridge across the impossible. Thord, her name, hung in the air, a tangible thing, woven from dust motes and longing and the scent of lavender. Silas's eyes, those deep, knowing pools, slowly, deliberately, not a blink, a closing, a profound, peaceful surrender. His body, so solid a moment before, sagged. The pressure on her chest lessened as his paws slid down, his head dropped, his body went limp, a soft, heavy weight in her lap. His breathing, which had been a steady, quiet rhythm against her, stuttered, stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, full of the echo of a voice, full of the green heart on the wall, full of the small treasures scattered on the carpet, full of the love that had just spoken, and the love that had just let go. Eleanor sat frozen, the tin box digging into her palm, the old cat, her silent guide, her mysterious comfort, lifeless in her lap. The breaking point wasn't the sob, or the discovery, or even the whisper. It was this, the shattering realization that Silas hadn't just led her to forgiveness, he had been the vessel for it. And the cost, the final, beautiful, devastating cost, was himself, the final gift, paid in full. She wrapped her arms around his still warm body, bowed her head over his dusty gray fur, and wept, Not just for her mother, but for the silent, scarred angel who had carried her home. The old house held its breath. The silence after Silas stopped breathing wasn't like the silence before he came. That had been a void, a sucking emptiness that devoured sound and hope. This silence held within it the echo of his purr, the phantom brush of fur against her ankle, the lingering warmth where his body had pressed into hers. Just moments ago, Eleanor sat on the dusty carpet, her mother's room swirling around her, the scent of lavender now mixed with the sharp, metallic tang of grief. And something else, a profound, hollowed-out peace. Silas lay heavy in her lap, utterly still. His head rested against her thigh, eyes closed as if in deep, untroubled sleep. The jagged scar on his ear, a pale line against the gray fur, seemed less a wound now, and more a mark of honor. Time stretched, thin and elastic. She didn't know how long she sat, cradling him, one hand resting lightly on his side, feeling the terrifying stillness beneath the soft fur. The tin box, its meager treasures spilled onto the carpet beside her, the river stone, the daisy button, the brittle violet, the cracked porcelain watch, seemed to watch her too, witnesses to the final, sacred exchange. The storm of weeping had passed, leaving her raw, scraped clean, but strangely calm, like the land after a hurricane, devastated, but washed clear. She looked down at Silas's peaceful face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raspy but steady. The words felt utterly inadequate and absolutely necessary. "You brought me home." Practicality, the mundane anchor, eventually nudged her. He couldn't stay here on the floor of this dusty shrine. Infinitely carefully, she lifted his body. He was heavier in death, or perhaps it was the weight of what he'd carried for her. She carried him out of her mother's room, across the threshold she'd finally crossed, not as a mourner, but as a pilgrim returning. She laid him on the worn braided rug in the kitchen, in the patch of weak morning sun now filtering through the window. He looked smaller. The fierce, watchful spirit that had animated him, gone. Only the vessel remained, beautiful, scarred, and profoundly empty. She moved through the next hours in a daze, a ritual of necessity, finding an old, soft towel, deep blue, like the bowl she'd bought him, wrapping him with tender care, tucking the edges around him, a shroud for a silent saint. The absence of his presence, his watchfulness, was a physical ache. No shadow beneath the radiator, no golden eyes tracking her from the garden wall. The house, for all its creaks and sighs, felt fundamentally altered. His absence wasn't emptiness. It was a space, shaped exactly like his presence had been, filled now with gratitude. She chose the spot beneath the old lilac bush, where the late afternoon sun pooled warm and golden, where she'd often seen him sitting, watching the world with quiet contemplation. Digging the grave was physical grounding. The earth was cool and dark, rich with the scent of damp soil and decaying leaves. Each shovelful felt like an act of devotion. She lowered the blue bundle, placing it gently in the earth. For a moment, she hesitated. What words were enough? For the cat who found lost letters, who understood grief, who scratched at hidden hearts, and spoke her mother's name? She knelt in the soft dirt, her hands resting on the cool soil covering him. "Thank you, Silas," she said again, her voice clear now in the quiet garden. "For finding her when I was lost. For bringing me back." She didn't say goodbye. It felt wrong. "Said so," she whispered. "Rest now, old friend. You did good." She placed the smooth river stone from the tin box on top of the freshly turned earth. A marker, a connection, a piece of the creek where her mother's laughter once echoed, now keeping watch over her silent guide. Returning to the house was like stepping into a different story. The same walls, the same creaking stairs, but the light, it fell differently. The weight, it had shifted. She walked, not tiptoeing around grief, but moving through spaces that felt claimed. Hers. She went back to her mother's room, not as an intruder, but as a curator. She opened the heavy curtains wide, letting the afternoon sun flood in, chasing the stale shadows into corners. Dust motes danced, golden, in the sudden light. She saw the room clearly now. Not a shrine, but a room. Furniture worn with love and use. The faded floral wallpaper, with its small, revealed green heart, and the open cavity beside it. She gathered the spilled treasures from the tin box, held the daisy button, remembering the soft wool of the cardigan, touched the brittle violet, a ghost of childhood devotion, cradled the cracked porcelain watch, its hands forever frozen at 3:15. Forgiveness, warm and liquid, flowed through her as she held it. She placed the button, the violet, and the watch carefully on her mother's dressing table. Not hidden, displayed. Tributes to the love that had endured, beyond mistakes, beyond time. The river stone was with Silas. Routines resumed, but transformed. Making tea for one. The cobalt blue bowl sat empty by the radiator. She couldn't bring herself to move it. A silent monument. She ate at the kitchen table, the empty chair no longer a stab wound, but a space held with gentle remembrance. She looked at her mother's portrait often. The young, laughing face in black and white. "I see you, Mum," she'd think. "I remember. Nights were different." She slept with her door open. The house was quiet, but the silence now held a companionable quality. She missed the warm weight at her feet, the soft rumble that had lulled her through the worst nights. But the crushing loneliness was gone, replaced by a sense of company, the company of memories, honest and whole. She began clearing her mother's room, slowly, tenderly, folding clothes for donation, the scent of lavender sachets clinging, packing books, tracing familiar spines. She found more small treasures, a postcard from a long-ago trip, a recipe written in a friend's hand, a dried sprig of rosemary, each one a small spark of connection, not overwhelming, but comforting. One afternoon, sorting through a box of linens, she heard a sound, a soft, melodic chirping, from the garden. She went to the kitchen window. Perched on the garden wall, right where Silas used to sit, was a bluebird. Vibrant, impossibly blue, like a piece of the summer sky fallen to earth. Its tiny chest puffed out, singing a bright, liquid song. Eleanor froze. Saw the brightest bluebird today. Sat right on the kitchen sill. Made me think of your eyes. The words from the lost letter, found because of Silas, echoed in her mind. The bluebird tilted its head, its beady black eyes seeming to meet hers through the glass. It sang another burst of notes. Then, with a flash of impossible blue, it was gone. Tears welled. But they were warm tears. Sweet tears. She pressed her hand against the cool window pane, over the spot where the bluebird had been. A message, a confirmation, a circle gently closing. That evening, she took the cracked porcelain pocket watch from the dressing table. She didn't try to fix it. Couldn't fix it. Instead, she found a thin, navy blue ribbon from her mother's sewing box. She threaded it carefully through the little loop at the top of the watch and tied the ends together. She slipped the loop over her head. The cool porcelain rested against her skin, just below her collarbone. The cracked face, the frozen hands, a tangible reminder, not of brokenness, but of secrets kept, love enduring, and forgiveness found in the most unexpected places. She stood at the back door, looking out at the twilight garden. The lilac bush, where Silas rested, was a soft silhouette against the darkening sky. The air was cool, smelling of earth and impending rain. The house behind her no longer echoed. It hummed, contented hum, like the memory of a purr. Life hadn't magically become easy. The grief for her mother, and now the sharp, specific ache for Silas, were threads still woven through her days. But they weren't the whole tapestry anymore. There was space now for the scent of baking cookies, for the flash of a bluebird, for the cool weight of a mended secret against her skin. She had chosen to stay, not out of obligation or trapped by ghosts, but because this house, with its hidden hearts and silent guardians, had become something new, a testament, a sanctuary she had fought for, with an old cat as her guide, and emerged, not unscathed, but whole. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the cool, damp air. The first drops of rain began to fall, softly, tapping against the porch roof, like gentle fingers, or the careful scratch of a loving paw on the door of the heart. The lilac bush, planted over Silas's resting place, became Eleanor's sanctuary, not a grave, but a living monument. She'd sit on the old, sun-warmed garden bench nearby, cup of tea steaming forgotten in her hands, watching the slender branches sway in the breeze. Spring deepened, painting the world in vibrant greens and hopeful blues. But the lilac remained stubbornly bare. Just knuckled buds, clenched tight against the world. Patience, she'd whisper to it, or perhaps to herself. He's just getting settled. Life, in its quiet, persistent way, crept forward. The cobalt bowl stayed by the radiator, cleaned daily, filled with fresh water, a ritual of remembrance. Sometimes, catching it in her peripheral vision, she'd swear she saw a dusty gray shadow flicker nearby, only to turn and find sunlight and emptiness. The ache was a familiar companion now, not sharp, but a deep, resonant thrum, like the echo of his purr in the bones of the house. She finished clearing her mother's room. The furniture, polished with lemon oil, smelled of sunshine and care. Boxes were donated or carefully stored. The room felt lighter, cleansed. The dressing table held its small treasures, the daisy button, the brittle violet, the cracked porcelain watch resting on a square of deep blue velvet. And above them, on the wall, the revealed green heart, and the small open cavity beside it. Eleanor hadn't closed the panel. It remained a quiet acknowledgement of secrets kept and found. One cool, misty morning, Eleanor was kneeling in the garden, weeding around the base of the lilac bush. The soil was dark and damp, rich with the promise of growth. She worked gently, careful of the roots, her fingers tracing the earth near the river stone marker. As she pulled a stubborn dandelion, her knuckles brushed against something. Not earth, not root. Porcelain. Her breath caught. She carefully brushed away the loose soil. Then, he nestled against the lilac's main stem. Partly buried, lay a tiny, perfect porcelain kitten, no bigger than her thumb, glazed a soft, pearly gray, with minute, delicate features. One ear, impossibly, had a tiny, painted nick, a suggestion of a scar. Its eyes, though merely painted dots, seemed to hold a depth, a knowing stillness. Eleanor sat back on her heels, the porcelain kitten cradled in her muddy palm. It was cool, smooth, unbroken. Where had it come from? It wasn't her mother's style. Too modern, too whimsical. Had Silas, in his mysterious comings and goings, buried some small treasure of his own? A final, impossible gift? Left for the lilac? Or for her? A warmth spread through her chest, starting beneath the cracked watch face resting against her skin, flowing outwards, like the first sip of hot tea on a cold day. She carefully washed the tiny figure at the garden tap, revealing its exquisite detail. The gray was the exact shade of Silas's fur. The scarred ear, an uncanny echo. She carried it inside, not to the dressing table with the other treasures, but to the windowsill above the kitchen sink, where the morning light fell brightest. She placed it there, beside a small pot of budding lavender, a silent guardian, watching over the cobalt water bowl below. Days passed. The porcelain kitten caught the light, a small, steadfast presence. Eleanor found herself talking to it sometimes, as she washed dishes, or prepared her solitary meals. "Sun's strong today, little one. Think we'll get rain?" The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt answered. By the light on the porcelain, by the scent of lavender, by the quiet hum of the house itself. One evening, a knock at the back door. Unusual. Most visitors used the front. Eleanor wiped her hands, a flicker of apprehension stirring. She opened the door. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down stood on the porch, wringing her hands, her face pale with distress. In her arms, bundled in a faded yellow dish towel, was a tiny ball of smoky gray fluff, eyes wide, terrified, and barely open. "Oh, Eleanor, I'm so sorry to bother you," Mrs. Henderson stammered, her voice thick with worry. "I found her, or rather, he found me." She gestured vaguely towards the overgrown hedge dividing their properties. "She was just sitting right by your lilac bush, crying so pitifully, cold as ice. No sign of a mother, nothing. I didn't know who else." Eleanor's gaze dropped to the bundle. The kitten was impossibly small, frail as a dandelion clock. Its fur, a soft, smoky gray, lighter than Silas's, but with the same underlying warmth. And one tiny ear, the left one, had a small, fresh, jagged tear at the very tip. Still pink. Eleanor's heart stopped, then slammed against her ribs. Coincidence? It had to be. A stray kitten, injured, seeking warmth near a bush. Nothing more. But as she reached out, her hands moving of their own accord, the tiny creature stopped its shivering cry. It turned its wobbly head and opened its eyes. They weren't the tarnished penny of Silas. Not yet. They were the deep, hazy blue of newborn kittens. But even through the milky film, the gaze was startlingly direct. It locked onto Eleanor's face, with an intensity, a recognition, that stole her breath. She took the bundle, the tiny body trembling against her chest. It felt like holding a hummingbird's heartbeat. "So cold," Eleanor murmured, tucking the towel closer. "Let's get you warm." Mrs. Henderson hovered anxiously. "Poor little Scrap. Do you think? Can you?" She trailed off, hope warring with pity on her face. Eleanor looked down at the smoky gray face nuzzling weakly into the towel near her collarbone, right where the porcelain watch lay. The kitten made a tiny sound, not a cry, but a soft, questioning RP? Identical to Silas's gentle inquiry. A shiver ran through Eleanor, not from cold, from the sheer, impossible rightness of it. She met Mrs. Henderson's worried eyes. "Yes," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I can." The next few days were a blur of warmth, formula, and fragile hope. Eleanor set up a nest of soft blankets in a cardboard box. Near the radiator, beside the cobalt water bowl, the porcelain kitten watched from the sunlit windowsill. The tiny survivor, a little girl, the vet confirmed, was fierce. She latched onto the bottle with a desperate strength, her tiny paws kneading the air. A miniature engine of need. Eleanor named her Ember, for the spark of life that refused to be extinguished, for the warm, smoky gray of her fur, and, quietly, for the glowing embers of memory that this tiny creature seemed to stir. Ember grew stronger. Her eyes cleared, revealing a color that made Eleanor's breath catch. Not Silas's tarnished gold, but a luminous, warm amber, like honey held up to the sun. Deep, knowing, and utterly captivating. Ember had quirks. She claimed the patch of sun on the Persian rug, precisely at 2:17 p.m., not melting into a puddle like Silas, but rolling, batting at dust motes, a tiny whirlwind of gray fur. She adored the cobalt bowl, not drinking deeply, but dipping her tiny pink paws in the water, splashing with intense concentration. And she was fascinated by Eleanor's mother's room. The open door seemed to draw her. She'd wobble to the threshold, sit, and stare into the sunlit space, her little head tilted, ember eyes wide, as if listening to a story only she could hear. She never ventured far inside, just observed. One afternoon, Eleanor was sitting on the floor of the room, sorting through a final box of photographs. Ember, having exhausted herself chasing a dust bunny, had curled into a smoky gray cama, asleep on the braided rug near the dressing table, bathed in a pool of sunlight. Her tiny chest rose and fell, a soft, almost silent rhythm. Eleanor picked up an old photo, faded color. Her mother, maybe 30, laughing, holding a squirming bundle of gray fluff. A kitten, scrawny, big-eared, with a fierce glint in its young eyes, and a jagged nick, just starting to heal, on its left ear. Eleanor's heart stopped. She'd seen this photo before, years ago, but she'd never looked, never seen beyond the image of her mother's joy. The kitten was unmistakable. Silas, young, vital, already bearing the mark that would define him. Her mother had known him decades before Eleanor returned, before he became the silent guardian of the old house. The revelation washed over her, not as a shock, but as a deep, resonant chord struck on the strings of her soul. He hadn't just been her guide. He had been her mother's companion too. A bridge spanning generations of love and loss. His presence, his knowing, his final sacrifice made a different kind of sense. He wasn't just a cat who found her. He was a legacy. Returned. A soft sound. Eleanor looked up. Ember was awake. She'd sat up, stretching her tiny front legs, yawning wide enough to show a pink tongue and needle-sharp milk teeth. The amber eyes fixed on Eleanor. She did something remarkable. She didn't scamper over. She didn't mew for attention. She walked with a startlingly deliberate dignity for one so small, across the sunlit rug, past the sleeping spot, towards the wall, towards the green heart, and the open cavity. Eleanor watched, frozen, heart pounding. Ember stopped, right beneath the cavity, looked up at it, then, slowly, deliberately, she lifted one tiny, smoky gray paw and placed it, firmly, on the faded floral wallpaper, not scratching, not tapping, just resting it there, over the spot where Silas had tapped, where the hidden panel lay. She held it there, for 3 long heartbeats, her amber gaze fixed on Eleanor's face, then lowered her paw. She gave a tiny satisfied shake, from nose to tail tip, and patted back towards her sunbeam, leaving Eleanor sitting on the floor, photo of her mother and young Silas trembling in her hand, the porcelain watch warm against her skin, and the impossible truth settling into her bones. The gift wasn't just Ember, or the porcelain kitten, or even the photo. It was the understanding that love, true, deep, enduring love, wasn't a straight line. It was a circle, a spiral, connecting past to present, mother to daughter, old guardian to new spark, through gestures repeated, through hearts revealed, through names whispered, and pause, resting gently on the doorways. We build between worlds. Ember curled back into her coma of sleep. Eleanor carefully placed the photo, showing her mother and the young, scarred Silas, on the dressing table, beside the daisy button, the brittle violet, and facing the tiny porcelain kitten, on the sunlit sill. A family portrait, spanning time. She rose, walked softly to where Ember slept, and knelt. She didn't touch the sleeping kitten, just rested her hand, palm down, on the warm braided rug, near the tiny rising and falling chest. "Welcome home, little Ember," she whispered, her voice thick with a wonder that felt like the first true breath of spring. "Silas taught me how." So, a breeze stirred the lilac branches. For the first time, tight clusters of deep purple buds showed the faintest hint of unfurling. The lilac bloomed, not tentatively, but in an explosion of fragrant purple, as if making up for lost time. Heavy clusters, like crushed velvet, drenched the air with sweetness. Outside Eleanor's kitchen window, she'd stand there, steam from her morning tea curling past her face, watching bees drift lazily through the blossoms. The scent, heady and nostalgic, wove itself into the fabric of the house, mingling with the smell of fresh coffee, lavender from the windowsill pot, and the warm, milky scent of kitten fur. Ember grew, not just in size, but in presence. Her smoky gray coat deepened, a soft charcoal cloud, lit by those astonishing amber eyes. She was a whirlwind, a tiny acrobat scaling bookshelves, a fierce hunter of dust bunnies, a connoisseur of the 2:17 p.m. sunbeam, where she now sprawled, not just rolling, but often staring intently at nothing, or perhaps at something only amber eyes could see. Her tiny scar on the tip of her left ear had healed into a pale, neat notch, a badge, a whisper of legacy. The house no longer whispered of absence. It hummed, With the rhythm of life rediscovered, Eleanor kept her mother's door open. Sunlight washed the room daily, falling across the polished dressing table, illuminating the small treasures, the daisy button, the brittle violet under glass, the cracked porcelain watch, the photograph of her mother, young and laughing, holding a scrappy gray kitten with a familiar nicked ear. And facing them, on the windowsill, the tiny porcelain kitten, its painted scarred ear catching the light, a silent sentinel. Ember treated the room with a peculiar, reverent curiosity. She'd wander and sniff delicately at the legs of the dressing table, bat gently at the fringe of the rug, but she always returned to one spot, the wall, beneath the green heart, and the open cavity. She'd sit there, tail wrapped neatly around her paws, amber gaze lifted, not scratching, not tapping, just listening. Sometimes, she'd make that sound, Barbie, soft, questioning, echoing through the sunlit quiet. Eleanor would pause, whatever she was doing, and the air would seem to thicken, holding its breath, waiting for an answer that never came in words, only in the scent of lilacs, or the way the sunlight pooled just so, on the river stone, beneath the blooming bush. Eleanor wore the porcelain watch constantly, the cool smoothness against her skin, the tiny frozen hands, had become a touchstone, not of time stopped, but of time to forgiveness. She realized wasn't a single act, but a daily practice. Forgiving her mother for leaving, forgiving herself for not understanding sooner, forgiving Silas for the breathtaking cost of his final gift, forgiving life for its unbearable beauty and its inevitable pain. The crack in the watch no longer felt like damage. It felt like a map, a river of resilience, carved into something fragile, making it unbreakable. One soft evening, with twilight painting the garden in lavender and gold, Eleanor sat on the back porch step. Ember, after a vigorous bout of attacking a fallen leaf, came and settled beside her, not curled, but sitting upright, alert, gazing out at the lilac bush, now heavy with blooms. The scent was intoxicating, a living memorial, a testament to roots, deepening in darkness, to burst forth in light. Eleanor rested a hand lightly on Ember's warm back. The purr started instantly, a low, contented thrum, vibrating through her palm, up her arm, into the quiet chamber of her heart. It was different from Silas's gravelly engine, brighter, lighter, but carrying the same fundamental frequency. Alive. She looked at the kitten, really looked, at the fierce intelligence in the amber eyes, at the small, proud notch on her ear, at the way she held herself, even in relaxation, with a quiet dignity that felt ancient. "Who are you, little Ember?" The question floated, not demanding an answer. Perhaps she was simply Ember, a spark, tended by love's enduring flame. A new chapter in an old story. The message, when it came, wasn't in a whisper or a ghostly touch. It was in the weight of the cat beside her, in the perfume of the lilacs, in the cool porcelain against her chest, in the open door behind her, letting light into a room that had known only shadows. It was the understanding that grief and love are not opposing forces. They are the same river, flowing from the same source. Grief is the depth, love is the current. One cannot exist without carving the path for the other. Silas hadn't erased her grief. He had guided her through it, to the vast, quiet ocean of love that lay, boys, On the other side, an ember, was the sunrise, glittering on that ocean's surface. Life wasn't perfect. Loneliness still visited. A familiar ghost at the kitchen table. The ache for her mother, the sudden scent, turn of phrase, could still ambush her. The memory of Silas's final moments, the weight of him going still in her arms, could still bring a lump to her throat. But the ache, now, was wrapped in gratitude, a bittersweet companion, instead of a crushing weight. She had learned to hold space for all of it. The universal truth, woven into this story of an old house, a grieving woman, and two cats spanning a lifetime, was simple and profound as a heartbeat. Love never leaves. It changes shape, shifts form, from mother's embrace to cat's steady gaze, from whispered name in the dark to porcelain watch against the skin, from dusty gray fur to smoky charcoal whirlwind, from hidden heart on a wall to lilacs bursting forth in fragrant glory. It endures, not in spite of loss, but through it. It finds us in the hollowed-out places, sending guides, whispering comfort, leaving signs, as long as we are brave enough to leave the door open. Eleanor took a deep breath, filling her lungs with lilac and twilight and possibility. Ember leaned into her hand, purring louder. The sound, a soft engine, pulling her forward into the gentle unfolding of the rest of her life. She looked towards the blooming lilac, where the river's stone rested, under a canopy of purple. Thank you, she thought, not just to Silas, but to the love that had sent him twice. For the journey, for the guide, for the spark. The final sentence, the one meant to linger, poised on her lips as the first star winked, alive in the violet sky. Sometimes, the most profound healers arrive on silent pause and leave footprints deeper than eternity. Before you go, if this story of love, legacy, and a lilac's promise touched your heart, please, like this video. It tells us these stories matter. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment of hope, healing, and the quiet magic waiting in your own world. New tales arrive every day. Comment below. Tell us where you're listening from and what piece of this story resonated most. Your words become part of our next chapter. Share. Send this to someone who needs a reminder that love never truly leaves. It just changes form. You are the reason we tell these tales. Thank you for listening, for believing, for keeping the door open. Until the next story, be kind to the silent guides who cross your path. They might just be leading you home. Goodbye for now.